everybody, but a little sugar from Trish Stratus changes everything, doesn't it?
Hell yeah. Dang right, man. I am looking at my office here now. I'm looking at a little grill. It's a replica grill, like you would take out like your green egg, but only a more traditional grill, right? And I was working on the cookbook and doing some other things, and always a big griller. And so she gave me that as a gift. I still got it. Let me see what it says here. JR, thank you for your support and for believing in me, Trish Stratus. Well, I kept that all these years. That's been 20 plus years. It hadn't got lost in the moves and things. And she was one of Jan's favorites too, by the way. But nonetheless, I got it here in my office. I still think about it. She was such an easy hire. She wanted to do it, and she had the great look. You know, she had that Pam Anderson look to me. And Pam Anderson at that time was smoking hot after being discovered at a CFL, Canadian Football League game. You know, she became a huge star. So Trish had a similar look. What a sweetheart. But we could tell, at least, she was going to be a bigger star than anybody in TNA. TNA, Test and Albert. They're good hands. God bless Test. He passed too early. But she was the diamond in the rough in that whole scenario. And Bubba Dudley helped facilitate Trish becoming a star with a very unique and innovative rub. So I thought that presentation was really interesting, and I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it. But I've always enjoyed the Dudley's work, and Trish is one of my all-time favorites. So it worked out for me. I liked it.
This match is 11 minutes and 4 seconds. The entire build, of course, is to the table spot. I mean, that's what everybody's looking for. But I think people really are into this whole Bubba and Trish thing. Eventually Trish gets on the apron, takes her jacket off and starts wiggling, and Bubba loses interest in the match. Eventually he goes after him, or he goes after her. She kisses him again. He shakes off the magic powers of the kiss, and instead power bombs her off the top rope through the table. She does a stretcher job. And, this is written in the Observer. She apparently has asked for Bubba to not protect her as obviously as he's done with other women. She'd agreed to take more of the bump, which he was a little reluctant to do, but ultimately agreed to it. I guess she wanted to get over as someone who could do her own stunts. 2 stars. Test and Albert get the win, but what everybody was looking for was Trish to go through a table, and it happened.
Yeah, a lot of people, a lot of women, a lot of men that were green in the business, just got into the business, would have been very, very reluctant and leery of taking a power bomb from anybody. Thank God it was Bubba, because he did know how to execute it without killing someone. That's kind of the name of the game in this world of pro wrestling. Make it look like he killed him, but it doesn't. But I always admired her courage and her commitment to be not just being she's a pretty version of Moolah. She's a good female wrestler, and she's always been in the mid card. Let's not forget that, and all the great talk and rightfully so and deservedly so of the ladies like Charlotte and Becky, Ronda, the WrestleMania main event, all great things. But before that, there was a show called Monday Night Raw that was getting good ratings, and they did reserve the last segment of the show for the big stuff. And remember that Trish was in the first ever closing segment of Raw as being a female. So she was a groundbreaker, and that attitude that she's taking that power bomb was one of the reasons that she facilitated that for herself. Really a great pro, and so proud of what she went in the Hall of Fame. It's like seeing a daughter or your niece or something like that go into the Hall of Fame. I just was very, very proud of her accomplishments there that night when she went to the Hall.
Let's keep it moving here. Oh, I guess we should mention, we see Trish loaded into an ambulance, and then there's a car pulling up. It's Eddie Guerrero and Chyna, and he's informed by a referee that he has to go to the ring right now to defend his European title. And the story is that Eddie was just at his prom and got back just in time for him to defend his European title, beating Essa Rios.
Yeah, because Conrad, you know that drive from El Paso after a prom to Washington D.C. is challenging.
It is,
even without traffic.
Well, maybe not in this quarantine era. You might be able to zip right through there.
Yeah, right.
Meltzer would write, I guess the entire GED and prom gimmick was only for an excuse to rip China's dress off, since they've never shown her in her underwear before. Guerrero and China came in driving a 57 Chevy to make sure everyone recognizes this is the single most stereotypical racial character in the industry. He's arrived late, so they go to the ring in prom clothes, and Guerrero actually wrestles in dress shoes and dress pants, but wearing white socks. Pretty good match here for what it is. S.A. Rios is, not quite the performer yet that Eddie Guerrero is. Also, it's worth noting, S.A. Rios is not here by himself. He's got a very young Lita in his corner. And after the match, Rios would drop kick Guerrero into China. And as she was stunned, Lita tore her dress off. 2 3/4 stars. Of course, Eddie retains. I thought it was okay for what it was, but we know that Eddie Guerrero is capable of so much more than some of this, but I guess we gotta be, gotta have a little seasoning, gotta be a little entertaining, gotta have a little sizzle, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A little JR seasoning makes everything better. And Eddie, yeah, look, it was set up. This was set up to get China over.
Right.
That was the motivation for this angle. Well, that's not right. Eddie was in reservoirs all the time. I can't believe they do that. That's stupid. That goddamn booking's crazy. Okay. But there's got to be priorities in any match. You can't have multiple agendas in any pro wrestling match and expect it to quote unquote get over. You can't. You got to have a focus, and you got to have laser light. Here's what we're trying to do. In that match, it was all about the continued evolution of Joni Lauer, and she and Eddie. Again, when I heard the creative about we're going to put Eddie and China together, blah blah blah, I thought it was crazy until I saw the natural chemistry they had on camera.
Right.
And when you see that, well, this is a good idea, JR. This, you weren't right on this one, because this is going to work, and it did work. And so, but I thought the match was better than 2 3/4 stars. I liked it, but of course I'm an Eddie Guerrero fan through and through, but nonetheless, it was a unique story. The white socks, the crazy ass clothes, going his front. He got his GED, Conrad, right? He got his GED, so he's celebrating the prom he never attended with the 8th wonder of the world. So I thought it was fine for what it was. It wasn't a closing match. It wasn't serious content. It was a little bit of a let me up type matchup.
S.A. Rios is not with the company too much longer after this. Why don't you think things worked out better for him and the company?
He had some issues. I don't remember what they were exactly. It's been so long, 20 years ago, but it wasn't because he wasn't a good hand. But he sometimes was a little bit careless. Could be, when you're doing a lot of high flying stuff, you cannot be sloppy. You cannot be sloppy. Because not only does it look bad, and you're in a magnified area when you're up in the air and you're doing things so they're strictly focused on somebody in a moving target. Fans their eyes will draw to things that are moving, and sudden movements or fast movements or multiple move sets is a big thing. But the other issue that's more important perhaps than that is the fact that high risk sometimes can lead to big injuries if they're not executed correctly. He might have been a little bit, I don't recall, Bruce might remember that better than me, but I think he might have been a little bit careless at times. And I do think there was something that tells me, and I hope I'm wrong, or hope I'm not saying out of school, but it seemed like there were some substance issues that might have been in question at that point in time. I don't remember, but he had a good look, and, we were trying to tap into more of a Latin audience. So the kid had talent. He just didn't seem like he was the social / cultural fit in the locker room that you ideally might have wanted. But I just don't remember all the exact reasons for his downfall. But we didn't miss a beat when he left. But nonetheless, I thought his match with Eddie was very solid.
Let's get to the next match. But before we do, let's say that we go backstage. Triple H and Stephanie are interviewed by Coachman in the locker room. He says he's going to prove that he's that damn good. Of course, Vince is here too. And he said, most of us were surprised that Steve Austin wasn't here yet. And Vince said Austin may have encountered some transportation difficulties. So
wink, wink.
Nice little tease. Next up, we get Chris Benoit retaining the Intercontinental title against Chris Jericho by DQ. They go 15 minutes and 8 seconds. And Meltzer would say this was an excellent match until a lackluster finish. The crowd heat wasn't there until the latter stages. It is a great match, but the finish, maybe not the best we've ever seen. Benoit's going to give Jericho a snap suplex on the belt, goes for a diving headbutt, but Jericho grabs the belt and puts it in Benoit's path, and Benoit's nose smashes open. He's bleeding badly, immediately on contact. And then White calls for the DQ on Jericho. Jericho puts the referee White in the walls of Jericho after the match until other refs break it up. And JR at first says it was a DQ, but it was a bad call because the cameras totally missed the finish. But then after the replay, they show the finish perfectly, and he changes his tune and says it was a great call. That's all, of course, directly from the Observer. 3 3/4 stars. I like the match. I like the post match. I would have liked to have seen a clean finish, but it was quite the visual to see him busted open with the belt. What'd you think?
I liked it. I think those guys had amazing chemistry, Chris and Chrissy and Chrissy, Chris, two Canadians. Hey, don't think that doesn't mean something to these guys. When you got two Canadian wrestlers have a high profile match on the pay-per-view in WWE, don't think they didn't try to go out there and kick the ass of their compadres from south of the Canadian border. They did. And it was those are great. That's great motivation, and it's good for the business. I think anything that motivates you to raise your game in a positive way. I've always believed that when you get guys that are as skilled as Jericho and Benoit, the only time you'll do a DQ finish is if you're leading to a major match that has a no DQ stipulation, or where disqualifications are addressed in the structure of the match. Because when you sometimes when you do a finish like this a DQ, here's my theory on that, Conrad. The theory is that if my favorite wins, I'm happy. If my favorite loses, I'm not happy. I'd rather either be happy or not happy as to be unfulfilled, as to be sitting on a emotion that left me feeling a little bit empty, like you apparently felt on that finish being a DQ. The DQ was kind of creative.
Yeah, of course.
And the fact that we didn't get the shot on the camera the first go around, which necessitated me to say I think it was a bad call because I didn't see it, or I didn't see all of it. Then, as you mentioned, the replay showed that it was a good call, and then I corrected my deal, my theory. But I thought those guys had a hell of a good match. I love the chemistry of it. It was fun to watch it again. Both guys are really, really strong performers. They worked snug. It was good, man. It was a good match, and it was good to see the two Chris's do their thing and represent Canada in a big way. And they did. It was nice.
If you're in a 30-year loan, you have to go to savewithconrad.com right now. We are routinely helping our podcast listeners take their 30-year loan and pay it off in half the time with roughly the same or sometimes even cheaper monthly payments. Now, I know what you're thinking. You've probably looked at a 15-year loan before and decided, I can't afford that. I don't think you can afford not to do it right now. You see, interest rates are better than they've ever been the entire time I've been doing mortgages. I started doing mortgages back in August of 2001, and I've never been able to offer as many customers as I can right now home loans with interest rates in the 2s and 3s. Find out how much money you can save right now for free, and I'm telling you, it's going to catch you off guard. Just this past week, we helped a listener go ahead and save more than $100,000 worth of unnecessary interest. And really think about that. Had they not went to savewithconrad.com, they would have just continued to plug along through life thinking they had a good deal and overpaid more than $100,000. Keep more of your own money. The alternative is to go ahead and work for this money, pay taxes on it, and then just give it away. Don't do that. Most of us have gotten used to our bank account being drafted with that mortgage payment every month. We've gotten used to living without it. How many payments do you have left? If you don't know the answer, if you don't know how old you're going to be when you pay your house off, you haven't done enough planning. And we routinely help those podcast listeners cut years, I'm talking years, of unnecessary house payments off of their loan. And oh, by the way, if you've got credit card debt, this has never been easier than it is right now. We're routinely helping families save 5, 6, 7, even $800 a month, but at the same time, pay their house off faster. And oh, by the way, all that high interest you're paying on those credit cards, it's not even tax deductible, whereas the interest you pay on your mortgage is.